for everybody watching, I just told Shawn what I'm going to do. I'm going to try something new today. I'm going to show you a few images of Shawn. So I'm just going to put up a few overlays here. So we're just going to drop in with a little visual experience before we kick off the conversation. So here we go. Let me just head over there and bring over some of Shawn's beautiful images. So for all of you out there who don't know Shawn yet until this moment, first of all, let's see some of his beautiful imagery. Here's one amazing shark whale. Let me just do that so we don't lose that. With a goddess. This one was called the goddess, Shawn?
The warrior goddess, yeah.
The warrior goddess. One of my favorites.
You should add that all of these are completely real. And I think that's really important. Yeah,
please. And if you want to, as I'm popping these up, Shawn, if you want to throw in anything, please feel free, okay?
Not a worry, yeah. I think the images you're going to see, like this one, for example, are really a connection between humans and nature. Trying to make it a little bit more accessible to mainstream audiences instead of having people decked out in full scuba garb and regulators and looking like aliens. The idea is to make an accessible human being someone can connect with, and connect with these magnificent creatures in a way that you recognize them as not other aliens, but in fact, we're actually visitors to their world. So again, the imagery is to take charismatic marine megafauna and other marine life, create a human connection with it so that when it comes time to push that red alert about the dire state of all of these creatures, people around the world actually recognize them and are inspired to protect them.
Beautiful. And this one I love so much. Wait there, where's it gone? Let me find it. Overlay this one. Tell us about this one, Shawn. This is phenomenal image. Oh, this is lovely as well. I found this. This was
taken as part of our Guardians of Rajampat film tour, where we we're working to support an initiative, Conservation International, to take 10 years of amazing conservation history in literally the global epicenter of marine biodiversity in eastern Indonesia, Papua. And it's sort of in celebration, but also to foster another decade, we created a film entirely in the local language with the local community's voices, celebrating their successes and also highlighting the risks ahead. And then we took that on tour, and for the entire region, a quarter of that region's population actually saw our tour.
Amazing. Here we go, Shawn.
This is the one. This is an old classic. This one was just a fun shot I did many years ago in this Mujeres. And I thought, wow, this is really neat. And I put it out there, and I think within a week or two, it garnered almost 100 million views. It was the front page of Yahoo News for almost 5 days. And I had to sort of ask myself, why was this image so popular? And I realized it sort of spoke to that sort of that childhood imagination that we all have about the creatures that lurk beneath the sea. And it made it super accessible. And again, there was that human connection with nature. And that image was one of the most important images in sort of transforming my approach to storytelling.
Okay. Love it. Thank you all for bearing with me with my new style.
Yeah, that's a tough one. For the last 15 years, I've been investigating the shark fin trade, and really trying to put a face on literally the scale of global devastation. It's a global epidemic, in fact. Every country with a coastline that has or had sharks has been targeting them, extremely, just primarily for their fins for the trade. As a result, we've been killing north of 100 million sharks a year, primarily for their fins. So, part of my journey has been to halt the destruction of one of the most what was one of the most prevalent families of species on the entire planet, and now it's been reduced to, in many populations, less than 1%. That's me with my friends in Lemekara, Indonesia, what was the world epicenter for manta hunting. And we've been working down that community for several years, working on a transition from hunting to sustainable alternative livelihoods in tourism, fisheries, and research. And this is a bunch of the kids in that village hanging out with me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And the last one, my cool little videography. Here we go. Boom. Wonderful. Shawn Heinrichs. And I am super happy to have this conversation. I'm hoping that the awesome internet bears with me, because I'm in the best connection, but we are having a few technical issues. But let's go. Let's dive in. Let's have fun. Thank you all for being here. You're amazing. So, Shawn, thank you for that little intro, a little spontaneous intro. Where to begin? I've been looking into your work. Obviously, we have a mutual friend, Rich, who I want to acknowledge today by making this conversation possible and for educating me and introducing me to you and your work. I mean, I'd already was familiar with your film, The Cove, that you co-created with a group of filmmakers or storytellers, or I don't know what you like to call yourself, more like undercover investigators almost, and then moved into, I just watched your film Racing Extinction, which I've been sharing with everybody. And if you're watching this today, please do go and check it out. It's not available in every country at the moment, which I want to speak to Shawn about that today. But Racing Extinction is an awesome movie, talking about some of the showing clearly what some of the things that Shawn just mentioned around the shark fin, with the shark abuse. I mean, the scale of this abuse. But Shawn, I don't know if you want to, right now, as I said to you before we began, we have a short time together, 50 minutes from now. And one of the things that I love about you is the word you said, that you're not interested in awareness, or you are, but it's not about awareness. It's about how to move beyond awareness so that we can inspire action and create real meaningful change. So right today, I've grabbed you on the 3rd of February. Where are you at? What's going on? What can we bring to the world in this conversation?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the mission up front, because for me, when it comes to the work I'm doing, the mission comes first and foremost. There's a lot of, especially more recently, actually for the last decade, but really recently, there's been a lot of pulls on my schedule, my time, and a lot of opportunities. There's TV series, there's campaigns, there's all kinds of photography competitions and all those things, and people are like, you should do more of that. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not really interested. I really have one goal, and that's to connect the global community to these incredible marine life and also all the life on this planet, and make us realize that we are part of nature. We're not separated from nature. We're actually one with it, and that by literally suffocating our planet, by basically injecting hugely unsustainable volumes of CO2 and carbon and all kinds of things into the atmosphere, while at the same time taking out all the forests and taking out all the reefs and taking out all the fish, we're suffocating our life support system. And we're taking away the very creatures that make this diverse system so special. So I don't really have time to go out, given if you look at the scale of that issue, and just try to raise awareness, because we're well past that tipping point. At the end of the century, we're going to lose more than half of the species on this planet. And if you look at the trajectory that we're on right now, the rate that we're losing rainforest, we're losing twice the size of the state of Florida every year in rainforest. And the state of Florida is a massive, massive area. The 5 boroughs of New York City, that size every single day. So, I mean, you just imagine massive Mercedes just cutting through rainforest tracts everywhere. By 2060, they project at the current rate, there will be no native rainforest left on this planet. 2060. Half of the oxygen we breathe comes from the forests and grasslands that we have. The other half comes from the ocean. And in the oceans, we've already, in the last 40 years, lost 40% of the plankton production. Now, phytoplankton is the actual mechanism by which we convert carbon dioxide into oxygen in the oceans. And at the current rate, we're going to lose more than 50% more by the end of the century, which means we've suffocated the land's ability to produce oxygen and the ocean's ability. What do we do when we're no longer producing oxygen on our planet? We're literally choked out our biosphere. At the same time, fisheries are expected to be, all commercial fisheries are projected to be in collapse before 2050. All of them. 2.5 billion people depend on the oceans as their primary source of protein. 500 million people for their primary source of employment. Now, when we look at what's happening in the planet from a terrorism standpoint and from a displacement and immigration crisis happening all over the world, what we're seeing is when natural resources run out, unrest ensues because people need food and they need jobs. And so like in Syria, you see all kinds of stuff where people basically start fleeing their countries because of war. You see famine in Africa, and you're seeing this happen more and more. What happens when 2 billion people go hungry? What is the #1 most fertile ground to recruit terrorists? Young, angry people who feel like their land and everything else has been stolen from them. Can you imagine the crisis we'll be in when that happens compared to where we are now? So this isn't an environmental issue. This is an all of us issue. This is a human issue. And it's not like we have decades and centuries to figure it out. We have to figure it out right now. And it's actually this generation right now that's either going to be the ones that said, hey, enough is enough, and we turn the tide, or future generations will look back and they say they're the ones who killed our biosphere. They're the ones who knew what was happening and they let it go and they let it all slip away. So for me, awareness isn't enough. We're in a much more dire state than that. And so everything I do has to inspire people to do something, to do at least one thing and hopefully do a lot of things, and then actually act on it. So with that action can come change, because it's all well and good to sit around the coffee table or the dinner table and talk about how bad things are and overpopulation and this and that. And then you go back to your daily life the next day and feel like you're an environmentalist because you talked about it. Talk is one of the greatest things in my mind that leads to inaction. Action leads to action. So what we need to do is, when we have those conversations, make commitments within ourselves and with our communities that we, as a group, are going to now change our behavior and do something to make this planet better, not only for us, but for our friends, our family, for our children and our grandchildren. So that's the reason why I'm in such a sort of urgent state of movement, and why I'm very selective on the things I do, because it's really, who needs TV shows about nature when in 50 years there won't be nature?
Yeah, beautiful. Amazing. And, as you're speaking and you're delivering all those facts, and you've been out there for a number of years, and, as people can go and see the films and people watch the films, and I'm coming from that place of, I'm a 39-year-old man, and I've explored loads of different documentaries. I've got the information, and I'm like, what can I do? It's always been like, what can I do, right? What can I do out there? And this was one of the things that sparked for me many years ago. And I thought, wow, people need to have the conversations, like real, authentic, transparent conversations, to cut away all the BS that I was witnessing, living, and so on, right? So a conversation, like you said, is talk, but a conversation doesn't always lead to action, right? It can lead to inaction. It can lead to just like, well, we talked about it, it sounded great, like you just said, around the dinner table and so on, give ourselves labels. But you're talking about some serious information. Now, I suppose what I want to throw back at you is that when I've delivered some of these conversations, I've delivered some information to people. People are so numb, and I know you know this, you even mentioned it on your TED talk, right? People are so distracted, so caught up in their own day-to-day life, so numb to what's actually going on in the world that they can't even watch Racing Extinction or The Cove without falling into more apathy and fear and worry and going, oh my God, it's so bad. What can I do? Oh my God, it's 100 million. Oh, there's only 1% left, and then everyone goes, well, I don't want to go into fear. And if we go into fear, we're all in that place of like, how's that helping? And, you've got this constant dynamic of sort of inaction based on your fear. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So speak to that a little bit for me, because when I watch it, I don't get like in a place where I'm like, oh my God, we're all dying, the world's doomed, it's all over. But I do get into a place where I'm like, wow, this is serious, and nobody seems to be acting on it.
It's interesting that you talk about a lot of concepts like fear and what the consequences of too much fear do. It's funny, I was on the airplane and I'd run out of every movie to watch, because I have to fly, unfortunately, a lot to go to work in a lot of places that I do. And I saw this really, I shouldn't disparage it, film Green Lantern. That's one of those superhero films. And they talked about this force that the bad guys had finally harnessed that was going to unravel the entire universe. And that force was fear. And so the mega enemy guy had grown and taken fear, and he sowed fear across the universe, and he was crushing entire, planetary systems with his power of fear.
Right.
And I think your video just cut out, by the way.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm with you, because I just noticed you froze, and I don't want to drain you. Okay. So you carry on.
So, and I thought, I actually sort of watched it, and I said, I wonder if the viewers are really getting what he's saying. And the truth is this, is that fear releases a chemical that only a few people actually respond with action. The vast majority of the population freezes in a state of fear. Right. It's sort of the predator and the prey. A lot of us act like prey, and we freeze. And the more fear that we have injected into our system, it's a protectionary response, right?
Right.
Block your face, protect your family. So you shell up and you stop growing, you stop learning, you stop reaching out.
Exactly.
But it does get your attention. And unfortunately, what the environmental movement learned is that with fear, they can get an immediate response. So with that, people started injecting more fear into the system, and they're thinking that they're going to get bigger and bigger responses. But fear is a mechanism that only works in a very small dose for a short period of time. And then that initial response, when that falls over, people retract and protect themselves. And they shut it out because people don't want to live in that world of shame and guilt and fear.
Right.
Well, the conservation movement largely has failed to respond to that reality. And if you see my TED Talk, one of the things I came to the realization is that I blasted the entire planet with shocking imagery of all the destruction, but I still wasn't getting any of the action that I needed. And it's because there's something, the antithesis of fear or devastation, which is what I call inspiration. Inspiration is something we all seek. It's a high. It's one of the greatest drugs on the planet. It's free, it's healthy, but it is very addictive, and I'm highly addicted to inspiration. And I recommend it for anybody who wants to try it. Well, the thing about inspiration is you can never get enough of it.
Yeah.
And when you sort of get on that inspiration high, you want to stay there, and you keep seeking it out and seeking it out again. And it's when we start harnessing inspiration that, yes, it's bad. Yes, there's a lot of things going on that we need to change, but you can do something that inspires you and make a difference. When we tap into that well, we have a bottomless supply of energy that we can harness. And it was sort of springboarding off of that I realized I needed to really shift my entire emphasis to creating beautiful, inspiring stories that bring people into the conversation, show them that they can make a difference and that they can feel good about making a difference. I'll talk a little bit about the Cove and Racing Extinction. And just for the record, I didn't actually create the Cove. I knew Louis during that process, but that was largely a creation of Louis, Olivia, Fisher, and the rest of that team. Okay, I was sort of the guy working on sharks and rays and all that stuff while they were sort of wrapping up the Dolph story. It was really sort of following that we came together on the Racing Extinction film. One of the things Louis said is it was really important to me when we really sort of discussed my involvement in Racing Extinction. And I said, you know what, Louis, I don't have time to make a movie. He's like, well, this is really important, and the work you're doing really could highlight that we can make a difference. And I said, yes, but so many of these films go into sort of negative land, and they leave the viewers wanting to slit their wrists, quit on life, and turn away. And I said, I just don't have time to do another one of those films. And he said, you know what, Shawn, The Cove was one of the most decorated documentaries in history, Academy Award-winning and everything, but it was the film that a lot of people talked about, but nobody wanted to watch. And he said, I can't make another film like that. I'd rather give up the awards and make a film that everybody wants to watch so that we can get our message to the world. And when he started talking like that, I knew there was something very substantive and real here. And if you look at the film Racing Extinction, and I advise anyone watching it who hasn't seen it, watching this talk who hasn't seen it, go for it, because you're not going to leave the film feeling depressed. You're going to feel like, yes, there's a weight on your shoulders, but you're going to feel like you really have the ability, the power to do something about it. And that's the secret for Racing Extinction, is we highlight these massive global issues. But then we come back to the fact that even one person or a small group of people can literally turn the tide of the entire world around on that issue. Mm-hmm. And it can happen not only out in the field and the sort of the frontline works that I do, it can happen right in your own hometown. It can happen in the automobile industry. It can happen in all kinds of places that are unexpected. And so it puts that power in your hands as an individual. And that's the power of our campaign, the Start With One Thing campaign. That lets you have a resource and a place to go where similar, like-minded people are also going. And there's resources and opportunities and feedback and all kinds of tools available to you so that even if you just want to change the food in your cafeteria, or you want to look about increasing the amount of wind power at your electric company, there's tools and support there to make those things happen.
Right.
So it's about driving change, starting in one place, being inspired by that, and then taking it further and further and further until we have a movement. And so Racing Extinction is much more than a film. For the entire team that made it, it is about building a really important mindful movement.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And you covered so much there. Yeah, thank you for clarifying the Cove involvement. I actually, it was funny because when I watched the Cove, and exactly how you described it, like Louis was saying, is that, most people I speak to, they're like, oh my God, I watched that, and I never want to see that again. It was literally that reaction. So, and I love the way you described fear. And for people watching, totally, that is the outcome of the film. You feel inspired. But I think what I want to also dive in with you, Shawn, is I just want to hear your views on this. Would be lovely. Is that years ago, right, when we're talking about the rainforest, about 5 years ago, I was in a supermarket, longer than 5 years ago, it was maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And it was like the Prince of Wales doing this campaign to raise a certain amount of money for the rainforest, right, to help the rainforest. I can't remember which one. It's a Princess Trust campaign, okay? And they was trying to raise money and, again, awareness and all these different people involved. And they needed to raise a certain amount of money. And without this certain amount of money, they wouldn't be able to actually get the infrastructure or the whole thing together in order to go and make a difference to the rainforest. And some of the things you bring into awareness and the facts that you show, like, you have friends like, for example, Richard Branson, who, is a friend and ally. You've got Louis, you've got the Discovery Channel. You've got massive support around you, right? And people like Rich, I don't know if he's walking, but Rich is interacting with people of a very I know it's not just powerful but influential space, right? Richard Branson's an influential man, yeah. And, like what the question I have, and maybe a question a lot of people have, and even some questions that popped up since we did this event that I've been promoting for you to come on this talk today, are like, yeah, but okay, so why isn't the film just out there in every single person's home television right now, right? Not that you have to buy it, pay for it, or whatever. Why isn't it out there? Why isn't Richard Branson screening on every single Virgin train, right? For example, or plane? Maybe he is. I'm just throwing some things out there, right? Yeah. Why isn't the Prince, who's supposed to be royalty, and the governments who's supposed to be interacting with all of these different things? If we're at such a detrimental phase, why is there so many damn red tape hurdles and bullshit BS, because it is BS, that seem to get in the way of really spreading this to wake up? No, I don't need the word wake up, but that's where I'm pointing to. Right. What comes up for you as I say that?
Wow, you just so why, sort of like saying, why isn't society changing, right? That's a big question. Let me see if I can answer that in a couple of layers, and I'll get to the film in a moment. And I hope the whole world pirates the film personally, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but that's my personal ambition. Is that and it's everywhere, and I don't care. But that's my mission. We have a lot of momentum in society today to keep doing what we're doing. If you look at the economic engine, if you look at the political engine, look at the religious engine, it's about using fear to maintain control of an ever-growing population.
Right.
Because the fear is, if we let go of that control, that somehow whatever wealth individuals have amassed, or whatever power or their land or their resources, are going to be at risk because you have this enlightened population that suddenly realizes that all of this is a fallacy, it's a game.
Right.
And so the mechanisms of control, again, going from economics to political to religion, their primary mechanism of control is fear. Fear of losing what you have, and fear of looking outwards into something new, because and you create enemies by basically making the other guy's the bad guy. And let's keep in our country, a lot of that happens in the US for sure, where this xenophobia permeates the culture, and there's always terrorists and all these other people that are trying to attack us, when it's a very, very tiny, minuscule part of our existence. But it feels like war is on the brink always, right?
Exactly.
If you keep your population in a state of fear at that level, they will mindlessly follow your orders, because that is what happens in war.
Exactly.
And politicians, religious leaders, economic leaders learned that a long time ago. And so it's not bad when the market takes a tumble for a while, because then everybody retrenches and you can keep them in control. So really, if you look at the powerful elite, and it's not everybody who's powerful. I know some powerful elite who are brilliant people, but historically, the powerful elite have abused that for fear that they would lose that status and lose their control of society.
Right.
And as a result, there has been every incentive, considering they control most of the airwaves, they control most of the papers, most of the communications, to keep people in that state so that they maintain their wealth differential and their power differential and their religious control. What's happened now, though, is with communications over the internet, everyone now has become a self-publisher, and suddenly you have freedom of speech internationally on a level that you've never had before. And controlling people's minds is something that you won't be able to do forever. Right. And people now are liberating their minds, thinking more freely, and starting to question a lot of the doctrine, a lot of the tenets that they had literally been educated on and ground in their heads generation after generation. So breaking that cycle of fear and control is such a critical part of this. The second part is that you have folks in greedy positions who know the truth, but because of the money they're making right now on it, they're spending inordinate amounts of money lobbying to pretend that it isn't happening. Exactly. The entire climate change story in the US. I mean, what a joke. Really? Why is it one of the most educated countries in the world, quote unquote, the US, but probably not so much anymore, there's still such a debate over climate change driven by humans?
Exactly.
Because few people with a lot of money have spent a lot of effort to keep people believing the BS that this isn't actually happening. Right. But the same thing happens with seafood. The same thing happens with lumber and all those different industries. A few powerful people spend a lot of money to convince the largely uneducated or apathetic masses that it's business as usual and everything's going to be just fine.
Boom. Boom.
So we have to return again back to where I sort of said earlier in this conversation. The way we address that is we have to reconnect ourselves with this biosphere. Instead of saying, I close the doors and outside is nature and inside is my little sanctuary, even inside is still nature. If you actually scrape that surface, there's more nature on every surface in your counter than you can imagine. More bugs and parasites and germs and everything you can imagine. Every time you shake a hand, kiss someone, breathe the air, you're inhaling nature. You're exhaling nature. Everything you dispose of goes into nature. Everything you consume comes out of nature. We are 100% inextricably tied to nature.
Right.
So when you understand that, you start to realize that we are part of the biosphere. Literally, the resonant energy and frequency of the planet resonates the same frequencies in our body. We actually resonate with the planet, as does every other being.
Exactly.
And in recognizing that, you start to say, okay, if I'm not divorced from nature, I'm part of nature, I need to actually start feeling for nature. And it comes down to that we right now have a fundamental lack of empathy and connection, compassion, for anything that extends largely beyond our personal self and maybe our nearest family and friends. Yeah. But what happens if we realize how tied we are to every single being on this planet, and that we extend that empathy beyond our friends and family, but to our neighbors on the other side of the country, on the other side of the world, regardless of skin color, regardless of race, religion, sex, and we actually realize that they have just as much a right to be here as us, that the center of the universe is not a pole coming out of the top of our head, because there can't be 7 billion centers of the universe on this planet. Right. Clearly we share a center, and that we're part of the center. And then secondly, that beyond just humans, every other being has a right to be here and plays a very important role in that system, and that we are connected with it. So our empathy to animals, and maybe it's not just our cat or our dog, but to animals that we don't see frequently, the ones that are being wiped out, rhinos, elephants, and tigers. But even the bugs, every part of it is a part of our system. And by killing off those parts of the system, we're reducing not only the probability that this existence of ours as humans is going to dissipate, we're also increasing the probability that, well, the certainty that it's going to be a very different life. You know, when you look at those dark city films, we'll be living in shelters, hiding from cosmic rays and stuff that now will destroy our bodies, and living from super bugs that have basically permeated our culture. We will create our own nightmare. But that decision is in our hands right now, and it comes down to compassion and empathy beyond ourselves about all things in nature, connecting with it, and then taking not just conversation, but actually action to defend that biosphere.
We could just allow a little bit of silence to allow that all to drop. Because So beautiful. I really thank you for sharing that, and also thank you for, I love, again, about the film. It's just like I'm not one of these people that's pointing out that they should do it and they should do it. And that's what I mean. It's not like, it's not Richard Branson's job. It's not the Prince's job. You just for me nailed it. It's like, if we don't educate our youth, if we don't educate people in understanding this amount of cloak and dagger, this amount of like undercover stuff that's going on, we can't detach ourselves from it to connect to the inspiration that you're talking about in order to actually do something that's really meaningful and connecting us to the one family. And this isn't about, for a lot of people, whether they're on the spiritual journey or they're in the self-development world, where this isn't just about oneness, and oneness being some great idea and some cool thing that you will talk about and feel good about. And it's all like, yeah, we're all oneness, and that, so-and-so is going to save the world. This is about, what does it really mean to actually connect to what Shawn's pointing to there? What does it really mean to actually connect to the bugs, to everything, and see that you are interconnected? You're an interbeing with all other beings. I mean, for me, I see instantly, war can't exist in that place. Consumption of this caliber of the, what did you say, Shawn, on the film? I took some notes the other day, but like in the next 100 years, 50% of all species could be gone, right? That's one of the statistics. Yeah. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we're looking at, like, this isn't, it doesn't matter what's gone or what's been. It's like what you're saying, Shawn, what I really want to emphasize for people listening out there is that there is a way out of that quagmire, which is my new word recently from my last conversation, but the hazardous swamp that we're all standing on. And the way that you describe fear is one of the things I do, Shawn, is do workshops and events and work with people to just explore fear. And, fear, the biosphere, nature, marine life, I don't remember being taught about any of that in school. I don't remember being told about any of this stuff, right? Like how we have a mechanism in our body that we need for survival, but then there's a whole heap of psychological fear that is just not ours. So maybe we can move here, Shawn. I'm feeling like moving into like educating the next generations. I love what you did in the film, and what you did not just in the film, but the way that we can bring it to the children and the parents and that lovely man. Do you remember? Of course you remember. But you remember what the fisherman said? It's like, he wants his children to see the manta rays. He connects to them. He's a fisherman. He's out there. But because they don't think they've got any money coming in, or they can't put their kids to school, they got to go and kill those beautiful manta rays for the gills, for Chinese medicine that doesn't even bloody help you. Don't get me started. It's insane.
There's an insanity about all of this. And I imagine we're running a really crazy experiment on this planet, right? It's like saying, I'm going to swim as deep as I can and hold my breath as long as I can, and then figure out if I can make it back to the surface. But I've actually never trained in freediving.
Right.
So I finally get to the end point, and I'm at 100 meters, right? And I'm completely exhausted of air. And then I go, oops, now I know how deep I can go. There's no way I'm getting back to the surface without drowning. That's literally the caliber of experiment that we're running right now. We're kindergartners running around with machine guns and bombs and nuclear weapons.
Right. We
don't have any clue what we're actually playing with here, yet we're pulling the triggers every single day on this environment. I look at sort of the education system, and you're absolutely right. We learn all the things we need to do to become wonderful consumers.
Right.
Nothing that we need to do to become the sustainers of our biosphere.
Right.
This isn't something new. If you go back to like Native American culture, the Native American Indians, their entire education was, how do I actually thrive and live in harmony with my system? That was their entire education system. So nobody grew up saying, wow, if I shoot all the buffalo in my backyard, I'll have no food next year. That wasn't even a thought. You don't do that. You only take what you need. You lament the loss of a life, and you sustain it. And if you're starting to extract too much in an area, you move away and you let it regrow. And so we have within our system, our native cells, we know all these things. It's that we have this developed brain, and that's probably the greatest opportunity and the greatest threat to the existence of our species. And that brain allows us to convince ourselves that the rules don't apply to us.
Right.
That somehow we're exempt from this cosmic rule that applies to everybody else, every other species on this planet. Every other species knows if you exhaust everything, you die.
Right.
But somehow this species has convinced ourselves we're no longer a resource economy.
Yeah.
Everything is a resource economy. How do you think growth happens? It starts, you can't get nothing and create more nothing. You take something that you didn't pay for and you capitalize on it. So the entire thing happens now in third world countries. And that's in our first world countries in the information age or whatever we call it.
Right.
No, we're just extracting them through the resources at a discount from somewhere else.
Right.
And that arbitrage gives us the ability to feel like we're creating wealth with our brains. But no, we're just basically turning wildlands and forests and all these natural resources into cell phones and into furniture and into buildings and into all the capacity that we think came from somewhere else.
Right.
So we are in a resource age, and when those resources run out, we will see an economic shift that we could never imagine coming.
Right.
Because we will not be able to recover, because once the whole capitalistic growth engine comes to a grinding halt because there's nothing left to extract, we are now left with facing reality that we are, just as every other species on this planet, limited to finite resources and limited to our capacity to either enjoy harmony within that system or disrupt it to the point that it collapses.
Right.
And that's a fact. And if you look at the Easter Island concept, the Easter Island is that island in the Pacific where basically the two warring factions, and as a result of their war, they kept taking every resource in order to build bigger monuments and bigger temples and bigger edifices to their gods and to build bigger shelters and all that. And eventually their little island was stripped of every tree and every plant and every fruit, and that entire culture died off.
Right.
And the reason was you had basically ego and fear that was driving competition between two clans. Exactly. Well, if you look at that and sort of as a metaphor for the planet, that's the battle that's raging not only across countries, but that's raging within all of us. Yeah. On the one hand, there's this desire to connect. We all need this connection. But on the other hand is this ego, and it's fed by fear. And if I don't get mine and I don't get enough, I'm never going to be happy. But I can tell you the iPhone 5, 6, and the 7, 8, 9, 10 aren't going to make you any happier. And that's why you keep getting the next one, because you're filling that bottomless pit of consumption. You feel happy in your life. In one instance, it's when you're in a place where you're in a good place with the people that you care about and you're doing something that matters.
Right.
That's when you're happy. Yeah. When one of those elements are missing, you're not going to be happy, and you're not going to fill it through consumption. But the economic engine, the political engine, wants to keep you as a slave. And the way they do it is they tell you consume, 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 because that is your path to happiness. Well, that may be your path for really short hits, that little fix, but it never is sustained, and it's certainly going to end in a state where your family, your community, and everyone else has nothing left, and there will be happiness, a shift and a decline in your standard of living and happiness that you could never imagine.
Right. Beautiful. And, and when we start to talk about this, when we start to look at the root, because you were talking about the root here, yeah, we're talking about the root of the human psyche, and it's something that a wonderful woman said just recently. I've got to plug in, but hold that fire. But you can talk to this. I'm going to go get my charger in a second. But there's something that a woman said recently. The brain gives you what it thinks you want, right? And if we've been conditioned to believe that we want, fear, we want separation, we want consuming, like you've already described, we want war, we've got all these damn toys and all this like mass amount of separation, as I just said, that's going on. Yet at the core, we're craving connection, as you just you beautifully described. But one thing that I keep realizing. And there's so many different messengers out there. I think of Polly Higgins, Charles Eisenstein. I think of so many people. Permaculture in its full essence of what it's trying to do, with the work you're doing, marine conservation. I mean, some of the people that were in the documentaries, there's many human beings out there that really are working constantly, daily, towards creating a more beautiful and a better world, and trying to rectify or heal or bring to harmony some of the sheer depths of ignorance that we've created. I guess the question is, and nobody will notice, and I know maybe you don't notice, and we don't have to, is that is whether or not we're just past that point of no return. And I laugh like with that sort of, that needing to be able to face death you know, we really needed to look death in the eye. You know, when I watched that film and you showed all those endangered species and some of them beautiful creatures, the beauty that you showed in that film. And it's like, wow, like when I see this, when I connect to this, when I'm in love with myself, I have consideration for myself, when I'm in love with the planet from that same place and I see the majesty, the beauty, I'm like, how can I go out and do anything that can cause destruction to any part of this beautiful experience? And yeah, speak to that a little bit, Shawn, because I know that you have this connection from such a young age into nature. But so many people, they've been born into their normative. Their normative is not. It's massively everything else you've described.
Brilliant question, and one that has, I think, led a lot of people to inaction. For me, the answer is very simple. It's never too late. The only question is, how much will we lose? How much ground do we have to regain before we act? And I look at some stories, you know, some of the quotes, you know, on my wrist, I have this band that I wear every day, the OPS band, which is Mahatma Gandhi, and it says, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And it's such an important, powerful statement because it doesn't say plan the change. It doesn't say do one thing only. It doesn't say talk about the change. It just says be the change. And the critical parts of that are this, is that there's only 2 days of the week that we can't get anything done. That's yesterday and tomorrow. The other day, today, is the one we can get everything done. And right. So, you know, I think it was Rumi who said, depression is living in the past, anxiety is living in the future, peace is living in the present. We need to be living in the present right now because that's all we have. We have this present right now. A comet could hit the earth in a year and all the planning that we made is all gone for naught.
Right, right.
So we have now, and this is our chance to make a difference. And if we live every single day that this is our day, then it's sort of, you have a mind shift. You stop worrying so much about amounting enough treasures to feed you for the next 5 years. And you say, well, I need to create a system that sustains me today. And it doesn't mean you're reckless. It means, yes, plan for the future, but live in the present so that that future has a better chance of manifesting itself in a positive way. The challenge we have right now is we're a bunch of robots running around with little programs installed in our heads that nobody actually knew are there. And those programs came from our families, our parents, our society, our churches, our television, everything. By the age of like 6, 8, most of those programs have been installed. Prior to that, we were free-thinking beings. And we were that 6-year-old that went and explored the woods and neighborhood and didn't care if we cried in church or cried in the market because we were sad, and we laughed out loud, and we did all those things that later on in life are considered reckless or irresponsible or socially unacceptable. When you were 6 or younger, you didn't actually feel that way. To you, it was being in the now. And you know, if you have children or you know children, there's nothing more present than a young child. They're always present, and it's to the point where you can barely manage it. But there's that power in the presence because the mind has not been conditioned to believe that change is impossible. At that age, change is a reality. It's every single day. Your mind is growing, your world is growing, everything's expanding. So I tell people when I give my talks and when I do my presentations and I focus my content, my base common denominators, I'm trying to reach 6-year-olds. Right. But it's a 6-year-old in everybody. Because I believe that's the part, if you drill down deep down inside of every person, there's a 6-year-old self before you were tainted. And that 6-year-old self is open to the new concepts, which are really the ancient concepts. And you're open to that connection because when you stepped out in the sun, you felt the warmth of those rays. When you looked up at the sky, you marveled at how big it was. When you saw a squirrel, you smiled at how this cute little fuzzy animal is in your backyard, you know? You connected with all those things in such a real, tangible way as that 6-year-old, and there was only that programming, conditioning, and apathy that started getting layered on veneer by veneer that started you not feeling those things anymore, and you started just thinking and thinking. Right. There's a story about, I don't know if you've heard this experiment about the chimpanzees, but there was like a half dozen chimpanzees in a room, and at the top of the ladder they had a thing of bananas hanging. And when a chimpanzee would try to go up and get them, they would just turn on these torrential showers and wet all the chimpanzees. And eventually they realized that if you go up the ladder, you get wet. So anytime a chimpanzee went up the ladder, all the other chimpanzees would pounce on it and beat it up. Exactly. Well, one by one, eventually the chimpanzees just learned not to ever go up the ladder. Then one by one, they changed out the chimpanzees with a new one. Exactly. And the new one would come in, run up, and immediately the other ones would beat it up.
Yeah, they would attack. They would attack. They would attack, even though they would attack, even though there's no reason to attack. Right? Carry on.
The water wasn't coming down anymore, but they knew that if they went up, they would. So ultimately, all the chimpanzees were changed out.
Right.
You had a group of chimpanzees that had never been showered on, but anytime a chimpanzee went up that ladder, the other chimpanzees would beat it up.
Mm-hmm.
And what a great, and this is a true experiment, by the way, what a great metaphor for society today, where we are so conditioned to believe from a place of fear that we can't make a difference and that we can't do these things, that despite the fact most of us have never experienced those consequences, it's just the societal pressure and conditioning and programming in all of us has led all of us to believe that we are in a state where it's impossible for us to drive change.
Yes.
And in one simple experiment, we proved that that is the state of the psyche. And so we have to get out of that cycle of sort of paralysis and move into a cycle of action and enabling. And I think that's where going back to connecting, going back to actually trying to feel what it feels like to be, just when you see the pain, suffering, you feel the joy, really disconnecting yourself from your devices again. And today we're using devices in a really positive way, but let's think about all the times we don't. Using this technology we have now as a way to enable greater connections. Think about all those programs that you ran. Question the programs that are running your head and start looking at every other species and saying, well, if they all believe they're part of nature and they're all connected, how is it this one species, us, is convinced ourselves otherwise? Call that into question and start trying to see if you can rekindle those connections, because I think that's when new truth comes about. Go to nature and sit in silence for half an hour. Guarantee no one on this call has ever done that. See what you learn by just sitting there quietly for that 1/2 hour. And you'll suddenly realize there's an entire world unfolding before you, one that you can't buy, one that you can't control, one that you don't direct, but one that is probably far more beautiful and inspiring than all the ones that you can control.
Yes, so nice. Yeah, this. I mean, this is the new narrative. You call yourself a storyteller. I do the same. It's like as Mac McCartney, and for those viewing today, beautiful live viewers, I always like to acknowledge you. Thank you for coming and tuning in with me and Shawn live, and choosing to dedicate an hour of your precious gift of life to listening to what Shawn and I have to share. But as Mac McCartney said, we need to call out for the poets and the storytellers. If you listen to Don Miguel, he talks about, the 4 agreements, reprogramming the psyche so that you can start to, walk with discernment, so you can actually question what is real for you, so you can actually take control of your life. There's many messengers out there talking about, being the artist of your reality, connecting to that inner child, and Shawn's describing it as the 6-year-old in all of us. And in that place, guess what? You are not only having fun, laughing, playing, and enjoyment, but you are in that space of inspiration. And I love the word, Shawn, that you used there. It's not a word that I always use, but I really like it. Enabling, right? Because it's enabling. That's a really nice word, because it's about enabling the youth of today. I'm about to go and do some work with a school in the Dominican Republic, and it's about their age between 0 and 18. But I'm probably going to be speaking to and doing some work with the sort of 12 to 18-year-olds and some of the younger. But just with the 12 to 18-year-olds, really talking to them about like what story do they want to be a part of? What stories are they already like playing out that are not their own? And how can we actually really enable them? I'm going to use your word there, enable them to realize they are the storytellers, and they can dream big, 10 times bigger, right? We can get these children to, and even not just the children, you said it earlier, right? This is about the workers, everybody out there, the builders, the millionaires, it doesn't matter if you've got money or not, the homeless. We can all step into this narrative of wanting to connect and be part of a new story. I don't know what I know we're coming to an end now, Shawn, but like I love that it's come around to again really education, and I mean, I know we've given a lot of facts for the people listening. I mean, there's a few notes I took today, but I just want to make sure I put this one on the talk, okay, because I know it's on the film, but like you described it as every American, but this isn't about me telling people that they must be vegetarian and vegan, etc. But I just want to read this one to you. If every single American skipped, okay? We're not telling you to stop, right? We just skipped meat and cheese for just 1 day a week for a year, it would be like taking, tell me if I'm wrong here, Shawn, 7,600,000 cars off the road when it comes to the carbon dioxide and what we're putting on there. Is that right in that, Shawn?
That's right.
Right?
Pretty shocking.
Yeah, pretty shocking, right? And that's just, and we're talking skipping meat, and if your brain is so caught in thinking you need meat and cheese as your staple diet, then I'm going to say to you as well, check in with that, because that is not 100% truth. Yeah, it's not guaranteed true. I tell you why, because I don't eat meat and cheese and I'm still here kicking it, living it, enjoying it, having fun. You know, I'm alive. I've got more energy than most people I meet, and I'm not eating meat and cheese. So, you know, I'm going to leave you guys with that one. But Shawn, anything you'd love to throw in the pot from what I just shared? Anything you'd love to say to the viewers that might capture this video? I'd love to tell them to head over to Start One Thing. But please, you know, we don't have to end now. But I'm mindful of your time. So if there's anything you want to throw in there, let's drop it here.
I think the message is this: is that there's a lot of bad news out there. A lot of bad news. And if you actually dig deeper and you actually uncover below that, the state is even worse than the bad news. And what I caution everyone to realize is it's not, you can't wait for someone else to do it. There is nobody else that's going to pick up the torch now and save this planet. And you know, I'm not going to save it single-handedly. And there's a lot of great people out there doing work. They're not going to save it. It's an all of us or none of us thing. It's like trying to plug the holes in one end of the boat, and the other guy at the end of the head of the boat is saying, well, thank God the holes are on my end. If the boat goes down, we all go down. So it's an all of us thing, and it isn't too late. You know, Jane Goodall said there's still a lot worth fighting for. When you look out, nature is resilient. The oceans are resilient. The forests are resilient. We just need to give them breathing room and give them some space to recover, and right now we're not doing that. So it's about taking the steps right now in each of our lives to make something meaningful out of our lives. Don't just do it for nature. Don't do it for the planet. Even if you don't do it for everyone else, do it for yourself. There's no greater inspiration than waking up every single day with a noble purpose. When you have that noble purpose, it gives you a reason to get up and do something. And when you do it, everything tastes fresher and sweeter. The air smells cleaner. It feels better. You feel better. Your body reduces chemicals and hormones that make you thrive versus survive. So it's about all of us taking those steps in our lives to connect, feel that empathy, and make those changes. And one of my favorite quotes by Reverend Saizen Kamakami, which is, better light one candle than curse the darkness. If not for that reason, you'll just feel better by doing that. Light your candle, be that beacon, and maybe someone else with a candle will find you. And that's where we get our movement started. So, you know, I'm asking everyone, you know, I have my movement, but it's really all of our movement. And that movement is connection with this entire biosphere, with this entire community of humans and nature and animals, and becoming a guardian and a conserver, not an exploiter and a destroyer.
Lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Beautiful. And I always say beautiful. It's one of my favorite words when I'm listening. I mean, like, you know, what I love, like my, I have to say that these conversations, they infuse me to act, you know, all the time, not just this one, all the conversations I have. Everybody that's ever sat with Simon and Sophie, I acknowledge you all. You're amazing. Everyone that's ever watched one of these conversations in the last 5 years, they give me inspiration. So if you're listening to this talk right now, have this conversation, have a conversation with the closest people in your life. Just if you're in a school, if you're a teacher right now, and you've got an opportunity to screen something to the schools, right? Get a projector out, screen a video. There's plenty on there. Go to racingextinction.com, look online, find something that you're really passionate about, screen it. Start a dialogue, get the children talking, get your community talking, bring your family together. Not just to watch some stupid sitcom, which, okay, is great, but is mind-numbingly distractive. Watch something with noble meaning, right? Something that's working towards the collective. Just shift yourself out of that egocentricity into that collective, out of the I into the we, you know? It's not about me, it's about we. And I think that what I like to say to people as well is that Shawn today has been talking about the biosphere. go and look at his website, go and look at the photographs, you go and explore some of the things that he's been showing to the world as a messenger. But there's also a wonderful guy, Ian McKenzie. He also sat with me on the sofa. He created a wonderful TED Talk. Once you've watched Shawn's TED Talk, go and listen to Ian McKenzie's TED Talk. And his TED Talk was about the noosphere. And it was, again, talking about the geosphere, the biosphere, and into the noosphere, where we are, and how what me and Shawn are doing today is planting a seed, a meme, a new narrative, a new story. And, I have somebody called me once, Shawn, they said that I'm a raging optimist. It's like, it's like Simon. He said to me, Simon, I think you're the only person that thinks that, like, we can actually pull ourselves out of any of this, like, insanity and darkness. I was like, no, there's more of us out there. Trust me, I do meet them.
That's awesome. I love it.
So that's Shawn, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your work. Thank you to Rich. And thank you for introducing us. I'm going to continue to share. I know you said the film's coming out more and more, and I won't tell everybody that you said it should just be copied and shared with the whole world as quick as possible. But if you haven't got to see the film yet, I'm hoping. Just one question, Shawn. It is coming out in the UK at some point. Am I right?
Yes, I actually am not privy to all the mechanisms of distribution.
No
I'm
problem.
surprised. It's on iTunes in certain countries. I don't know why it isn't on Amazon and iTunes in the UK yet.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't know why.
No
I've asked that question several times.
Okay.
I'll find out.
Yeah. If you could just, like, maybe if you have the capacity in your time to.
I will. On my notes, right? I'm writing it right now.
Yeah, because I tell you what, just so you know, I have had about 4 or 5, real, like, inquiries into that. They've been like, wow, where can I really want to see it? I really want to see it,
Yeah, I just wrote a note right now.
Okay, wonderful. So there you go. I'm gonna say goodbye to you. Shawn, you're welcome to hang up if you want to say goodbye to the viewers. That we had a nice little crew of live viewers with us today. So feel free to say goodbye. And if you hang up, I can still finish up. Thank you so much, Shawn.
Well, brilliant. And yes, what a wonderful, wonderful experience. Thank you, everyone. And go to, if you go to racingextinction.com, you can find our Start With One Thing campaign. Just try it. See what you can do. See what you can find out. But again, wonderful, inspired to talk to you all. And next time, take care.
Take care. All the best.